Hello, everybody, and welcome to another adventure in history where I am your host, your friendly neighborhood historian. Right off the bat, thanks very much, Kyle, for that resub. It is always appreciated. I will share our Spartacus emotes. Oh, I should go ahead and go trigger the fanfare because, it's important to do these things. But welcome, everybody. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. It has been somewhat of an interesting day for myself. Here you go. This is just for you.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus. And we're all Spartacus. Yeah, anyway, so yesterday afternoon I ended up running square into a migraine. May you live in times interesting. That's the curse, isn't it? Also a very funny Terry Pratchett book. So yeah, yesterday I managed to run headlong into a migraine. I tried to fend it off by sitting in the dark and closing my eyes, but by about 5 o'clock yesterday, it was just blowing up. By 7 o'clock, I had, hey Joey, and hey Vern, I had taken medication and it wasn't working, so I just had to pull the plug, and I was asleep by about 7:30. And slept it off, slept about 13 hours straight, which is super duper rare for me. Usually only when I'm ailing of some sort. So, that also put me a little bit behind, because I was supposed to be doing work for various things, school work wise, and also preparing for tonight's stream. So I had to get up this morning. I let myself sleep naturally. I did not set an alarm, but as soon as I got up, I had to hit the ground running. So I have worked a lot of the day today. Got your first shot. Whoop! Luckily, they didn't set the Pfizer to stun. Set Pfizer's the stun. Hope that second one goes just as well, Joey. Congrats on getting that first one. I know that there have been issues with some of our friends abroad getting access to things, so I am glad to hear that is progressing in the right direction. The show is Adventures in History. We talk about history in a way that's fun and approachable and easy. We talk about stuff in a way that is, I don't know, dare I say fun? I've already said fun. I'm still a little bit foggy from sleeping so much. Hey, Honeycomb, welcome. We have a good time here, or so I believe. Tonight's going to be an interesting one because we actually have some sort of rare additions to the lineup. You all know that I have been to, well, you might not know this, but if you've been around the channel for a while, you know that I have traveled probably more than someone my age would normally have traveled, and I have been able to do some stuff, archaeologically speaking, that is what I would say pretty rare for a lot of people. And because of that, I have been able to get my hands on some stuff legally. Let me stress this, not like the Nazis in Indiana Jones, legally. that I occasionally get to share on stream, and I'm very excited to be able to share 3 fairly unique artifacts tonight. And that'll come roughly, well, 1 here at the beginning, actually, and then 2 sort of in the middle of the discussion tonight. So that's going to be fun for me, and hopefully fun for everybody. So I hope that will encourage people to hang around for a little bit, if you have not already. And I've just realized that I do not have my images open. Images. Let me see if this works. Hey, there we go. Alrighty. How dare I say the F word? Yeah. Spoiler alert, one of the artifacts is the Holy Grail. No, I do not have the Holy Grail. I do have a Grail, and it is full of tea. Hopefully get me a little bit jolted to move tonight. It's been an interesting day. So, yeah. So as always, feel free to ask questions. Feel free to throw out all of the tangents. If you have a question that doesn't even necessarily seem related, just go ahead. Just go ahead and throw that one out there. You never know. It might be a fun diversion. I am not opposed the Spear of Destiny and the Grail. Yeah, so I said 3 special ones. So I have the Ark of the Covenant, the Spear of Destiny, and the Grail. So there we go. Not the Holy Grail, must be the Spear of Destiny. Yeah, you know. It is nothing so fanciful and much more actual and real that's still around. So, and perhaps the Holy Hand Grenade of Antioch. Bring out the Holy Hand Grenade. Oh man, I love those movies so much. Yeah, so what I was saying is feel free to be at home. If you just want to hang out in the background, that is absolutely fine. If you want to chime in and just say hello, that's okay. You know, it's all good. I want everybody to have fun and be comfortable and participate at whatever level you would like. But just know that everybody is at home here, and we're all a bunch of open-minded, nice people. Let me take a moment to brag on you all. We have covered what I would consider some really, really touchy topics on the stream lately. And we have had what I would consider no actual trolling. We've had a couple of situations where some people got a little bit antsy in their pantsy, but when prompted, immediately shut that down. Hey, Nomad, welcome. Just want to say, hey, you got a lurk? That's cool, but welcome. Do your lurk thing. So I just want to thank you all for being cool and handling rough topics with a proper level of respect and not going after things and not being jerk faces. I really do appreciate that. There are certain streams that I feel prior to talking might end up getting out of hand or have the potential to get out of hand, and I really do appreciate it when we get to come on stream, everybody gets to talk, everybody gets to participate, we have really good questions, we have a lot of good involvement, and at the end of the day, we all leave as friends. That is special. I don't think I have to tell you all how rare that is on the internet today. And I really seriously appreciate that. So give you all a round of applause. You're excellent folks. So much appreciated. Okay, so let us briefly explain what we're doing here, and then we'll get into the actual material for tonight. So we are covering history chronologically on Thursday nights, and we are doing that in chunks. And I know that if you've been here before, you've heard me say this about a bajillion times. Hey, Amartest, I see that lurk. I see that lurk. I need to make a lurk command. How about this? We will have ourselves a bit of a a bit of a community input. So go to the Discord. You don't have to do this right now, but in the stream suggestions channel on the Discord, put in what you think the lurk command should be. My initial response would be something like going down into a cave to look for something-esque. But I don't know. I'll leave this one a little bit up to you all. And perhaps on next stream, if we have a few that are particularly good, we might even have a poll to see whose idea gets selected. So if you have an interesting lurk idea, go throw that in the stream suggestions and just make sure that you put something in there that's like, I think this should be the lurk command. And if you see something that somebody else has written that you like, just comment, I really like that. And we'll go from there. Hey, Techman, welcome. Cheers to you. Hope you're having a great one. Hope everybody's having a great one. So, so we're covering things in chunks of time, usually about 100 years or a century at a go, and we are currently in the first century of the Common Era, or modern times, so we are covering the year span from 1 to 100, and that will be our phase, if you will, of this section, and then the next section will be about 101 to 200. You see how this goes. And we do this so that we can zoom in on individual places across the globe and not have to try to worry about doing everything at one time, because that would get really, really messy. So we talked last week about the rise of a big religion, currently the largest religion in the world, which is Christianity. The week before that, we talked about Rome getting into its first real dynasty of emperors, and tonight we are going to be looking at this region right in here. Sort of similar to where we were looking last week, but we're going to be looking at two particular regions. One of those being the Kingdom of Nabataea, and I've got a map. Of course, you know I've got a map. I've got a map that I'll show you in a little bit. And also the Roman original, well, it was originally independent and then became a client kingdom, and by the end of the night will be a province of Rome, that being Judea. So that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. But we're going to start off tonight talking about Nabataea. We've talked a little bit about them in a stream from last phase. Roughly, though, Nabataea was a kingdom that covered this area. That's the break screen. They did not cover the break screen. They covered this zone. You can see them right here, the Nabataean Empire. Of course, their capital is at the city of Petra, which, if you've ever seen Indiana Jones, well, specifically if you've ever seen the Holy Grail, you should have seen Petra. The place where they find the Holy Grail is actually one of the tombs in Petra. And the Nabataeans had put together a fairly decent-sized empire. It was one of the larger ones in the region, but it had run into the same problem that a lot of these empires had. For a second, you thought the Nabataeans were going to get their own theme song. I don't know what the Nabataean theme song would be. Something about spices, something about trade, caravans in the desert. I don't know what their song would be. That would be interesting, though, if I had the time and motivation to write theme songs for all of these groups. Maybe that should be some really, really expensive, high-priced channel point redemption or something. We'll talk about that perhaps later on. Anyway, so the Nabataeans. They have this regionally important area because they are, at this point, controlling trade that comes out of Asia that goes down into Africa, and they're controlling land-based trade that comes out of Egypt and goes up into Asia because they have all of this zone right here. Really important crossroads of the ancient world. And there's a little bit of trouble going on because Rome is expanding as well. And Rome, by this point, had conquered everything in this area and had turned this zone right here, which is the modern-day country of Syria, into a province called Syria. So Rome is sort of knocking on the door, and it's too big for anybody to really ignore. And this is going to cause a lot of trouble in some of these border zones. And if you've been around the show for a while, especially several of the episodes last phase and a couple of episodes this phase, you'll know that one of the things that the Romans like to do is mess around with who gets to be king of these little countries that surround them. They did that with Pontus. They are currently doing that with Armenia during this period of time. They had done that with Cappadocia and Macedonia, several of the smaller kingdoms that then went on to end up being part of the Roman Empire. So there are factions within the Nabataeans that are causing some tension inside of the country. There's a pro-Roman faction, there's an anti-Roman faction, and then there's a sort of a group that says, we don't really like Rome, but we also don't want to antagonize Rome, so we can just sort of try our best to nothing Rome. Like, we're just going to do our best to sort of stay out of their hair. And this is going to bring us to a particular king, and his name is AiH IV. And AiH is, let me get my pictures going, of this guy. Now, this is actually a later coin of his. You see him here. This is him on the what we would call the head of the coin, and on the obverse, you see him with his wife. This would have been his second wife, whose name was Shakilat, but he actually had a previous wife, and I would like to show you what that coin looked like. And it just so happens that I have one of those. So what I'm going to do here, and I didn't remember to do it ahead of time because I was a dum-dum, I was going to use my downward-facing camera that I use when I build models, but I forgot to. So I'm going to try to get this to zoom in and focus on our camera here. There we go. So this is a bronze coin, and on the face of it, or, well, this would actually be the face of this one, you see our buddy AiH IV in the front, and then his first wife behind him. And this was an early coin of his. It's probably issued somewhere around the year 6 or so. On the back of it, you see this really nice symbol of victory and plenty. It's, come on now, zoom. There we go. A horn of plenty with nice engravings. Is this what is a kind of a celebratory coin that let everybody know that AiH had done cool stuff and had brought peace and prosperity to his kingdom. So the coin itself is fairly small. It weighs a little bit more than it looks. If you were to pick it up, you would go, that's a little bit heavy. It is made out of bronze. It does have a patina on it. That's what we would call the sort of the dirty stuff. I have not cleaned that off. The reason I have not cleaned that off is because if you do it the wrong way, it can actually damage the coin, and I don't want to do that. What I need to do when I find one locally, or one that I could get to within driving distance, I need to have it professionally cleaned and then graded and sealed. That way it will basically be preserved as it is. So, let me catch up. Was her name in content? No, her name her name was Huldu. So his first wife's name was Huldu, Huldu, and his second wife's name was Shakilat, which is Shaqilath. Yeah, CGC the coin. Basically, that's what I need to do. I need to get the coin graded, but it's not the CGC. CGC, by the way, is the company that grades and seals comic books. So if you are familiar with comic books, there you go. His second wife was Count Chocula? No, good gracious, you all. Anyway, that coin itself is not totally super rare. It is one that is a little bit more difficult to find because the kingdom was small and because it did not have a very wide circulation. But Aretas is king for quite some time. He is king from 9 BC to 40 AD, which is a pretty long rule. He took over after the previous king met an untimely end. The previous king was a guy named Obodas III. And the stories are a little bit vague. Some people say that he died, he got sick and died. Other people say that he got poisoned. And at least one source implies that Aretas was behind the poisoning. And we're not necessarily sure exactly what happened here, but it doesn't seem like Aretas IV was actually from the ruling family of the Nabataeans. We know that he changed his name. There had been kings previous. Clearly, he's Aretas IV. There had been 3 other kings named Aretas. But it seems that he changed his name to Aretas so that he could use that as a regal name. But if that was already his name, why did he need to do that? If he was part of the royal family, why did he need to change his name? We're not sure. We also know that some people said that he wasn't from the actual main line, that he was a distant cousin of one of the previous kings, a guy named Malachus I, who had ruled before Obodas III. So we don't really know exactly who Aretas was and whether or not he was certainly inside of the royal family or if he was a direct descendant. We know that he was not a child of Obodas. So there's a little bit of contention here as to who exactly he is. However, what we do know is that he is going to call out to a person that is significantly larger than him. That guy's name is Augustus. Yes, Caesar Augustus, the emperor of Rome. Aretas sends him an embassy, and Augustus sends back, yes, I do in fact recognize Aretas as the rightful king of the Nabataean Empire. Yeah, new king, who dis? Exactly. So when Augustus recognizes Aretas, this gives him a big boost of legitimacy. So at that point, it doesn't really matter if there were people contending that Aretas was not a legitimate ruler. Once Augustus says this guy is the legitimate ruler, then theoretically, if you do anything against Aretas, you would be technically doing that against Augustus, and that would start this whole mess. And it turns out that Aretas was actually not in the pro-Roman faction. He was in the sort of not really giving very much of a care about Rome, insofar as they had recognized him, and now he didn't really care if they were friends or not. Now, he's not going to run around and openly, poke at the Romans, but he's also not going to go out of the way to be super friendly to them. That is until the later part of his reign. Again, he reigns for almost 50 years. So for the first long stretch of his reign, it does not seem like very much is going on. He is ruling very well. His country is doing quite well. But he starts thinking about expansion. And there are really only a few ways that Nabatea could expand. One of them is down the coastline, sort of south and eastward here into Arabia. And we haven't really talked very much about the people of Arabia at this period, but during this period, they are beginning to make substantial movements towards establishing centralized governments. Now, they're not there yet. Most of the people in Arabia, especially the people here in the internal part of Arabia, were what we would call either fully nomadic or semi-nomadic, and it wasn't really many of the people, except for those that were right around the coastline here, that were moving towards what we would call early kingdoms. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that trade was expanding and there were more people moving around the coastline of Arabia, moving between Africa and India over here. So these stopover cities were places where people could establish some dominance. But that's not necessarily what Aretas is interested in. North of him, of course, is Rome itself. West of him is also Rome, because by the time of Caesar Augustus, Egypt had been brought into Rome as a province. So really the only way that he could go is straight to the west into the kingdom of Judea. And that's going to be where some of the tension starts up. Now, over in Judea, there was this guy named Antipas. Technically Herod Antipas. And he was the son of Herod the Great. So we talked about Herod the Great a little bit previously in streams, but he was basically the Roman chosen king of Judea. He had sort of moved out the Hasmonean dynasty when he took over. Well, technically his dad did that, and then he took over, Herod the Great did. Herod was the guy that was king when Jesus was born, the guy that did all of the killing of the babies things in that story. Herod died about 4 BC, and Augustus was left with an interesting situation. Augustus was sort of interested in moving over into this area and taking more territory, including potentially attacking the big bads of the Romans, who were called the Parthians. And he didn't necessarily want strong potential enemies. And there had been some connections between the Hasmoneans and the Parthians before. So what is going to happen is that instead of picking one of Herod's sons to rule as king of the Jews, instead what Augustus is going to do is pick all of Herod's sons and give them sections. And he gives them the title Tetrarch, which is ruler of a quarter. So basically he breaks this stuff up, and there are several different family members. So Herod is the guy that's sort of ruling the region that is closest to the border with Nabataea. And that region is right around here, which is called Galilee, and the region right around here, which is called Perea. And of course, this is Nabataea right here. And initially, Aretas gets this idea, look, we don't have to be enemies. What if we tried to make a friendship grow between us? And what Aretas is really hoping is, what if I made my grandson ruler of your territory and my territory, and thereby I managed to take over your territory and added it to the Nabataean Empire? That would be great. So Aretas is going to marry his daughter to Herod Antipas. I should not have paused there. It sounded a little bit like I was saying that he had married his daughter. He was not a Ptolemy. He was a Nabataean. So he gets Herod to marry his daughter. His daughter's name is Phasaelus. So they get married, and this let's have kids or marry. Yeah. So we have not ended the weird marrying your family parts of history, but when the Ptolemaic Empire ended, one of the great chapters of weirdness based on marrying your family ended. We will come back to weird marrying your family stuff. And I say that with like, hey, we'll come back to weird incest and misogyny stuff in future editions of the show. All right. Anyway, daughters seem to make very good political currency. Yes, that is a very common thing in history. You have daughters so that you can marry them off to other people. Next time on Incest is Best. Oh, Kyle, you made me say that. Oh, and there's a clip for you. Anyway, so Phasaelus marries Antipas, and things go okay for a little while. But Herod Antipas is really interested in expanding his territory, especially because his dad had been Herod the Great and had ruled all of Judea, and Herod thought that he should get all of Judea. Sons for ruling, daughters for expanding the family. Yeah. So Antipas ends up getting into a fight with his brother Philip and ends up getting him killed, and there's a whole war where Antipas takes over Philip's business. And in order to justify taking over his brother's territory, Antipas wants to marry his brother's widow. But here's the thing. Herod Antipas was supposed to be Jewish, and by that point, the Jewish faith was not necessarily smiling so well on the polygamy aspect. They had sort of gone down to the idea that you need to just have one wife. But Antipas already has a wife. He has Phasaelus, who is Aretas's daughter. So what do you do then? Well, Herod says, I'm divorcing you. And so he divorces the Nabataean princess, and he marries his brother's wife to legitimize his control over Philip's territory. And this goes a bit sideways. Oh, I should show you. I don't have an image of Herod Antipas, but I do have a picture of one of his coins, which is this guy. And I picked this one specific because if we look here, we can see that we have his name, which is Herod Tetrarch. Technically it says Tetrarchoi. This is Tet, and this is our Tetrarchoi. So Herod the Tetrarch. And here we have Antipas. Boom. Anyway, so there's a good old coin from Herod. Only one, but one is the loneliest number that you'll ever know. Oh, yeah. Except with a wife, you have a companion and someone to hang around with, so you shouldn't really be lonely. Anyway, this is going to be the justification for a lot of stuff, because Herod Antipas pretty clearly tries to keep Phasaelus sort of locked away. He doesn't really want Aretas to know what's going on. He doesn't want him to know, hey, I divorced your daughter, which is a big, slap in the face to peace negotiations, and I married my brother's widow after I got my brother killed because I wanted more land. That's not really something. They don't make a condolence Hallmark card that says, I killed my brother and married his widow, I'm sending your daughter back to you, I'm sorry card. That's not something that you get. 0 is the loneliest number. When it comes to wives, I would say probably, because then you are really only one. There can be only one. Anyway, so this sounds like a soap opera. It kind of is a soap opera. But Phasaelus manages to break away, and she manages to run back to... Wait until the evil twin shows up. Wait until Rome shows up. So Phasaelus breaks away, gets out of what might have been some sort of house arrest and gets back to her father and tells him everything. Like, okay, look, he's super insulting. And this, by the way, happens around the year 33. And Aretas is like, oh, no, he didn't. And Phasaelus is like, yeah, he totally did. So Aretas says, let's invade. I wanted that territory. I was willing to sell you out basically to take it next generation. But since you're back, I may as well just go take the land. And you don't really know how Phasaelus responded to that. Like, thanks, Dad. Go kill my ex-husband. Family matters, right? Anyway, so Aretas invades, and he brings a fairly sizable army into Antipas's territory, and on the way in, it turns out that the remainder of Philip's army, so Philip again was Antipas's brother that he got killed, this army meets up with Aretas, and they're like, what are you doing here? And he's like, I'm going to go kill Antipas. And they're like, hey, we wanted to do that too. Can we join? And he's like, okay, cool. Let's come on in. So Aretas's army, augmented by the fugitives from Philip's territory, are going to just beat the mess out of Antipas's army. So much so that Antipas is basically forced to kind of run away, and we're not completely sure how much land Aretas took, but it was enough that Antipas pretty clearly did not have very much left. And he is going to fall back on the tried and true method of a deposed ruler. He's going to send a letter to Rome, and he's going to go, Rome, help me! Avengers assemble! And he's going to send... I should put the adventure hat on. I should have had that on, by the way, when I was showing you that coin. For those of you that do not know, this is the adventure hat. I bring it with me when I go on field adventures, and when I talk about places that I have been, or I show you photos of things that I have seen, or I break out the artifacts, I get to wear the lovely adventure hat. And when we see the adventure hat... we do the adventure hat emotes. Dun, 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 dun. Adventure. Anyway, so I'm going to put the adventure hat on because this picture is one that I took. He sends word to this guy. This guy is the Emperor Tiberius. The adventure hat was assumed since the coin was in your hand. Thanks, Fern. I appreciate the clarification. It was adventure hat in spirit. So Tiberius was emperor at the time, but Tiberius was a little bit weird by the end of his reign, and he wasn't necessarily super interested in getting involved in a big war. So what he does is he sends word to the province leader of Syria, the guy that's the procurator of the Roman province of Syria, and he goes, look, there's some trouble with one of these like client kings down there, so could you just go figure out what's going on, and I don't know, maybe straighten all this stuff out. And the guy that's the leader of the Syrian province is a guy named Vitellius. So Vitellius, who is the Syrian governor. So yeah, Vitellius is like, okay, cool, no problem, Caesar. I'll go straighten all this stuff out. So Vitellius pulls together all of his legions. Roman legion again is about 6,000 troops, and so Vitellius is going to pull together several of those, plus some auxiliary units, and put together an army of about 30,000 men, which was probably super overkill, right? To go handle this mess. And he makes his way all the way down to Jerusalem. This, by the way, is in 37, so all of this stuff takes a little while. The invasion takes time to prepare, the invasion takes time to go, then the messages from Antipas take time to get to Tiberius, and the word takes a while for Tiberius to send word to Vitellius, and then Vitellius takes a while to put his army together down and march down to Judea. So Vitellius gets to Jerusalem, and he's going to sort of prep camp there and sort of survey the area and see what's going on the ground. And while he's stationing in Jerusalem, making preparations to go fight Aretas, he gets word that Tiberius was dead. Tiberius had died in 37, and at that point, Vitellius was like, I just don't wanna. I think I'm going to go back home. So Vitellius packs up his army of some 30,000 guys and just marches back to Syria and says, "All right, Antipas, you can handle this yourself, right?" Deuces. Now there's some speculation here as to what exactly had gone on, and at least one of our historians from this era said that Antipas was being a real jerk and had basically insulted Vitellius several times, and had even potentially tried to support some people against him previously in a potential coup. And basically, it appears, based on our sources, that Antipas was just a giant jerk, and that Vitellius didn't really like the idea of helping him anyway. So when Tiberius died, Vitellius was like, "I don't have orders anymore. I'm gonna go back home." So, at that point, Antipas is basically, he's still alive, but he is effectively ruling in exile, and he doesn't really have much of his territory left. Aretas, though, still kicking, still in charge. He puts the anti in Antipas. I'll take it. So Aretas, though, was rather old. Again, he ruled 50 years almost, which is a really, really honking long time for anybody to rule. And in AD 40, he is going to die. And there's a bit of speculation, and I'll put the adventure hat back on. Lots of adventure hat today, by the way. Lots of adventure hat in this era, because I've been to a lot of these places. If you haven't figured it out, this is sort of my favorite era of history. Anyway, there is speculation that Aretas was actually buried in this thing, which again is the treasury tomb of Petra. And here you see me. This, by the way, was pre-adventure hat. I was just wearing a baseball cap at that point. And so this is me in front of the tomb. And by the way, all of that big stuff that you see in Petra, all of these carvings into the wall, these are actually tombs. So if you were to go inside the door here, you would not find the trials of the penitent man. You would not find the magical sock full of dust matrix thing that was in Transformers 2. You would just find a bunch of holes in the ground where people were buried, because these were tombs. Anyway, this is not Alexandretta. This is Petra. So there's a thought, and there is a substantial amount of circumstantial evidence that this treasury tomb was actually the tomb of Aretas IV. We don't know that for certain, but if you had to make a guess, he would be before Adventure Hat. I like that. So this is 1 BAH, because the next year is when I purchased the Adventure Hat. Holes in the ground for pants on the ground. Looking like a fool with your pants on the ground. Oh, hey Moose, welcome. I got that reference. Anyway, so Aretas dies, and the guy that takes over after him is going to sort of be the last really powerful king. And if I could, there we go. Malachus II. He is the king that takes over. He is from the family of Aretas, takes over after that. The thing is, when he takes over, he is not really going to be able to do too much. He's not really going to be able to expand anymore. Rome had very firmly taken over the city of Damascus. Damascus, of course, is the modern-day capital of Syria. That had one time been part of the Nabataean Empire. We don't know exactly when they lost it. Some people say in the early reign of Aretas IV. Some people actually say in the early reign of Malichus II. We don't know 100%. But they do lose Damascus, and they lose hope of regaining Damascus. They don't really have a lot of ability to expand further out into the deserts. They're not, again, really super interested in moving down into Arabia. And Rome has become very interested in Judea. So there's not going to be very much that they can do to expand into Judea. And Malichus's reign is basically going to be spent trying to do what he can to preserve the independence of Nabataea, because the Romans were coming. It's like winter in Game of Thrones, right? You know, winter is coming. If you were along the Mediterranean coastline from about 300 BC to about 150 AD, Rome was coming. And it's almost as unstoppable as winter. So Malichus is going to be, by all accounts, a good king, one that does what he can with what he has, but he is very limited on options. Basically, what he has is preservation is his number one goal. If we can keep the Romans out, if we can keep our territory ours, this will be a win. And Malichus is not going to do very much other than that. And I did say that he would be the last one. The guy after him rules for about 36 years, and he's the last one. And we'll talk about him a little bit later on in next phase. Because next phase, sorry Nabataea, you get taken over by Rome. By a guy named Trajan in 106. But let's go down to Judea. Judea. Ba-ba-da-bam. What's going on in Judea? Well, there's a lot of stuff that's going on down here. First off, let's talk about how the Romans got along with the Jewish people. And the answer is not so great. And the big reason is that Jewish people are monotheistic. They believe in one God, and the Romans were not. They believed in lots of gods, dozens of gods. And that ideology doesn't overlap. The Romans also have this concept of pax deorum in Latin. And it's going to be like, yeah, that's not right. I know it's in Latin. Pax deorum, which is the peace of the gods. Basically, if humans did what the gods liked, the gods would be happy, and the gods would keep the peace. But if humans did what the gods did not like, the gods would strike the humans down. For now, the timing was off. I suspect the timing was critical for my interpretation of for now, Moose. What was for now? I missed the correlation there. So yeah, the Jewish and the Roman relationship is very, very tough. The Romans have many gods. Oh yes, for now, correct. They would pretty soon start, well, not pretty soon. They're about 200 years away from giving up all the gods and then starting to persecute pagans just as badly as the pagans got persecuted the Christians. But we'll talk about that about 3 phases from now. It is somehow crazy for me to think that there are probably 20 plus episodes between here and Constantine. Because when I'm teaching this in World Civ, this is one day, and then the next day is Constantine. But of course, in my classes in college, we have to condense everything, and we don't get to talk about all of the neat little stuff that we get to cover here. Is it pious because the gods like it, or do the gods like it because it's pious? A little bit of both. but it's mostly a fear-based thing, right? The idea is the gods will smite us if we do not do this. There is a little bit of, it is good to do this because this is the right way to do things. There's this idea of the right way. It's called the mos maiorum, the way that things have been done in the past, which is sort of this bundled concept of tradition that Romans have. And inside of that is making sure that you do the right thing when it comes to the Roman religion. Do the temple services the right way, do the festivals the right way, make sure that your marriages are done the right way. You know, all of the sacrificing stuff has to be done the right way. That's larger in this big bundle of Roman tradition called the mos maiorum. But specifically, that's based on the fact that you don't want to make the gods mad because the gods have superpowers and they can throw lightning bolts at your face. Nobody wants a lightning bolt to the face. Let's just be honest. It's not a good thing. You don't want to wake up and get smote. Nobody wants to be smote. All right. Anyway, so for the period of time that we're talking about, the Jewish people did have some level of autonomy. They were able to have a limited judicial system. Of course, the Jewish faith has a lot of laws, and they were able to keep a court called the Sanhedrin. This was overseen by the high priest of the Jewish faith, and it was basically allowed to exist to keep the Jewish laws going. So there were Roman courts there as well to oversee the Roman law, and all of that stuff was technically over the Sanhedrin. And in fact, the Sanhedrin was no longer allowed to do things like pass death sentences. So inside of the Jewish law, there are several things that you can do that would get you death, either by stoning or various other things. And the Romans had not allowed the Sanhedrin to pass those death sentences, which we talked about when we talked about Christianity. When Jesus was brought on trial before the Sanhedrin, they wanted to kill him, but they couldn't do that, so they had to take him to the Romans and convince the Romans to kill him. Speaking of lightning, does the idea that God will strike bad people with lightning a relic of Zeus? You don't know where the Christian concept of getting struck by lightning comes from. You don't recall a biblical lightning strike. So, thunderbolt and lightning, very, very frightening, me, Galileo. The idea of gods having lightning powers is super ancient. We're talking Indus River Valley, Mesopotamia, ancient. One of the oldest Vedic gods is Indra, one of the really big gods in some of the Hindu faiths. Indra has a lightning bolt weapon that is so commonly used that it has its own name. It's called the Vajra, and Indra will throw that at you. But even if we go back to the early Sumerian stories, we see gods like Marduk and Tiamat having power to throw the lightning bolts or to summon the storms. And a lot of the big gods in old pantheons were thunder gods that are associated with rain. And this is mostly because of the importance of rain to crops. So your big thunder gods like Zeus, like, dare I say, Yahweh, Baal, if you are from the region of the Canaanites, these big gods that are the gods of thunder and lightning that are very, very frightening, are going to influence the Greeks. So this is something that probably goes back to the earliest periods where people figured out agriculture, when you see the thunderbolt being used as a lightning to smite someone. It's mythologically old. Yes, it is. I don't know what this stuff coming from the sky is. Must be the gods. Yeah, well, and see, that's a perfectly valid point, Moose. Remember that, we understand what lightning is today, and we understand, well, we as humans understand the concept of polarity and ions in the atmosphere and positive and negative charges between the earth and the sky. And we know that lightning flows in the path of least resistance and all of that stuff. They didn't know any of that. They had no concept of electricity or particles or anything like that. So they just knew that there was this big honking thing that came down out of the sky that if it hit you would kill you. And yeah, that's a God thing, right? A lot of the earliest stories in religions were created to explain what we didn't understand. And that was a way to make sense of it, right? So if we don't understand polarity and electrons and all of that stuff, we go, oh man, the gods are really mad and they're throwing friggin' lightning bolts down on us. The gods must be crazy. You're not supposed to say that because then they come after you too. So the Sanhedrin was a Jewish court that kept the Jewish law. The Jews had appealed to Rome to allow them to keep that. The Romans assented. The Jews were also allowed to collect a temple tax. The Jewish faith only has one temple. It is in Rome. I'm sorry, it is in Jerusalem. Good gracious, not it's in Rome. Ugh, I'm going crazy. What do you need this scientific method for? We already made everything up. Yeah, there's a guy from the old late medieval, early Renaissance England named Bacon that would have a lot of things to say about that. Is it provable? Is it repeatable? Do you have independent verification that it is not scientific fact? It is an alternative fact, perhaps, but I won't even go on to try to coin that term. Anyway, so temple being in Rome would be complicated. Yeah, it would be. So they have the temple. They are able to take up a special tax to keep up the temple. This is part of the Jewish faith as well. You are supposed to tithe 10% to the temple to keep it going, and to the faith to keep the priests basically able to operate. And the Judean people were also allowed to rest on the Sabbath day. This was something that's inside of Jewish law. You're not supposed to do heavy work or certain activities on the day of rest. This was in sort of callback to the day of rest after the end of creation, and you weren't supposed to do any work on that. Well, the Romans don't have such a day and would very frequently expect, especially work groups, people doing building and labor groups, to continue working 7 days a week. You didn't really get holidays, but the Jews were allowed to observe the Sabbath day. So they had this Herodian dynasty. You had this guy, Herod, and his sons. They had some level of independent autonomy, but this is really going to start changing when we get to a new emperor. And that emperor is this guy. This is, of course, our buddy Caligula. Caligula is going to rule from 37 to 41. Caligula starts off being quite all right, and by about the 7 or 8 month mark of his reign, he gets really sick. He does make it through the sickness, but he goes kind of bonkers. And then he basically starts telling everybody that he is a god, and he starts getting really paranoid. And at this point, Antipas, who's still around in Judea, is actually going to get exiled. There had been a guy named Agrippa, who was one of the sons of a brother of Antipas, so it's basically his nephew, that had been in Rome sort of schmoozing with the Romans, and he was actually kind of a friend of Caligula, and convinced Caligula that Antipas was plotting to kill him. So Antipas gets sent off into exile in Spain and dies there alone. And Agrippa, whose name is Agrippa. There we go. I can't type and talk. You all know these things. Those little boots must be too tight. Oh, well punned. Anyway, Agrippa is going to take over as leader of a lot of the region of Judea. And when Caligula goes real crazy, one of the things that Caligula wants is for everyone to worship him as a god. Everybody worship me. I'm a god. Do your thing. That doesn't go so great for the Jewish people because, again, the whole one God thing. And so Caligula decides, I don't like this. I want everybody to worship me. So the Roman leader at the time was this guy named Gallius Florus. No, I'm sorry. Florus doesn't actually run anything at that time. There's a very short procurator who, anyway, he's only important because he's there at this time. The Roman procurator, who is different than the Herodian leader. So there's the Jewish leader, and then there's the Roman governor. The Roman governor is like, I'm going to make Caligula happy. I'm going to go put a statue of Caligula outside of the Jewish temple. That doesn't go so great. It doesn't go very well at all. And the Jewish people get really close to like tearing this guy apart. There's a bit of a riot. The statue doesn't actually get put in place. Wait, isn't Caligula a very X-rated movie starring Helen Mirren? Yes. I think it's got Helen Mirren in it. Maybe. I actually can't remember if it's got Helen Mirren in it or not. I will be honest and say that I have not seen Caligula. I know that it is very X-rated, and I have not seen it. I know that it is probably very accurate based on the X-ratedness to who Caligula was, because his life was pretty X-rated. Anyway, so the Jewish people are really not happy about this statue thing. They're really not happy about this worship Caligula thing. And Jewish people across the Roman Empire are going to start getting really kind of perturbed with this whole you've got to worship Caligula thing. And if we look what's, kind of a larger world, down here in Alexandria, in Egypt, there were Jewish people in Alexandria. And there's actually a riot in Alexandria where some of they were mostly Greek mixed with local Egyptian, but some of the Roman citizens there got really upset with the Jewish people for not properly worshiping the emperor the way that they were supposed to. And there was this big fight inside of Alexandria between Jewish people and Hellenic Romans. And this is what's really going to put things on Caligula's radar. Caligula is going to, at that point, demand that a statue of him be placed in the Jewish temple, not outside of it, in it. We've got a puppy that is wandering around under the table here. If you would like to summon the puppy, she is right here. Here between classes, you're late, but you're in time for riots over emperor worship. Hey, Figment, how's it going? Yeah, there's the puppy emotes. Oh my goodness. So yeah, Caligula goes, you're going to worship me. You're going to do it. I do have a photo of what the Jewish temple would have looked like. I do have to say, it's only a model. Partially because it is only a model. The temple no longer exists, but this is based on the renovations of the temple that had been made by Herod the Great, who was sort of the grandfather of the guy that's running Judea at this point. Was a nice looking temple, but again, it is the only temple. There's only one Jewish temple. So Caligula's like, you're going to put a statue of me in there. And the Romans in Judea get this order, and then they kind of go, man, if we do this again, it's going to get really, really bad. So they sort of slow roll this order. They're like, let's send a letter back to Caligula asking him if exactly what kind of statue or something like that. Like, let's drag our feet on this and see if we can get him to change his mind. And it's actually Agrippa who sends him some correspondence and is like, look, man, I know you're an emperor, Hail Caesar, all that cool stuff. But look, dude, if you do this, it's going to be for real bad. And Agrippa actually talks Caligula out of this statue business. So things kind of get a lid put on them for a little bit. Caligula dies not too long after that. He dies in 41. We get a new emperor, a guy named Claudius, who's really not going to care so very much about the Jewish people in Judea. Are you not entertained? Is that not why you are here? Hey, Angel. Welcome. Thanks for the raid, my friend. And hey, Emmy. Hey, DJ. Hey, Gallery for Hertree. Hey, Hertree. What's up? How's everybody doing? Welcome. Hey, Zinklet. Did you get eaten by the alien? Have you seen more of the alien? For those of you who don't know, dun 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 dun. My friend Angel here is a game streamer currently playing Alien Isolation, a game that freaked me out so bad I literally quit playing it. You should go hang out. He's a rather proper gent and is a cool guy. Yes, and it scared the heck out of you. I feel that. I understand. It's a creepy friggin' game. If you haven't played Alien Isolation, it's a disturbing game. For those of you that don't know, when they wrote Alien Isolation, they actually... The game, by the way, is a sequel to the first movie, Alien. And I won't give you any more of the plot. I'll let you go play it if you want to. However, I will tell you that when the gamers designed the alien, they wrote 2 AIs to control the movement of the alien. One of them runs programs to make the alien come at you and basically try to kill you. The other AI monitors what the first AI does and basically prevents the alien from acting in a way that makes a pattern. So, for example, in some games that require stealth, you can go hide and watch the little bad guys walk around in circles. You can figure out where they're going to move, how long it takes them to move, and then you can plan your route. You can't do that in Alien Isolation because the alien will not act predictably. It's freaking horrible. Also, if you have a microphone, the alien will listen to the microphone, and if you start making noises, it will run at you. Hoy. It's crazy. That last one got in pretty bad. That makes sense why you died differently twice and he didn't turn up in the third. No pattern? Oh yeah, no pattern. No pattern. The alien will not act in a pattern. You cannot predict what he does or where he goes. He can hear you. Like, you can get into hiding spots. Like, the last time that I played it, I was inside a locker. Like, I had been crammed in the locker, you know. And I was hiding in this locker, and if you put it on different levels of difficulty, the alien can actually hear your character breathing. So when the alien walks by, there's a button for you to hold your breath, but there's literally only so long that you can hold your breath before the game makes you breathe again. And the alien was like right outside the honking locker, and I couldn't hold my breath anymore. And I thought, there's no way it's going to be able to get me. I'm inside the locker. Oh no! It rips the door off the locker, and then it's right there in my face. And that was like, hoop, nope, What kind of mind reading AI is this? Angel also got trapped under a table by 2 androids, getting kicked from both sides. Oh no! Oh no! That's horrible. Oh man. Although I should if my husband played and watch him freak out. Yeah, it's rough. It is. So let me say this: it is a brilliant game. The level design and the intelligence that the game designers put into the game is amazing. However, it freaks me the devil out, and I had to stop playing it. It's rough. You didn't tell your husband about creatures in the forest before you made play. Oh man, it's even scarier in VR because the alien is like right there. Like you can turn around in the game and the alien is right there, but if you turn around in VR, it's literally right there. No thanks. No thanks. Oh man, actual nightmare. Who would play it in VR? That's one of those things that you would do maybe on a dare or something, or somebody that doesn't have a pulse. You know, they're just like stone cold, like some sort of Buddhist monk who's done breath training and heart beat control stuff that can slow their heart rate down. Maybe they could go play that game in VR. I don't even want to think about it. Anyway, welcome friends. Zinklet, thank you so much for that follow. I should note, we are super duper close. We are 3 followers away from having our follower goal met, which is now you want your stepson to play it on VR and laugh when he screams. Oh, the Schadenfreude. So we are 3 followers away from a History of Middle-earth stream, where I talk about the history of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth, roughly similar to the way that I would talk about this. I start at the beginning of the history. We've done 3 of these episodes so far. I've actually already got the next one planned. I was sort of wishing that perhaps we might get 4 follows tonight and hit that 500 mark. It's okay if we don't. It'll still be there. But I've already written the outline for the next one. It includes dwarves and the immersion of dwarves from their long slumber, and goes all the way to the first kinslaying, which is a huge event in the history of the elves. Really cool stuff. I am very much excited to talk about that when we get there. So if you're listening and you like what you're hearing and you're having a good time and you have not already hit that follow button, please do, and consider coming back, not only for more history and fun stuff, but also some Middle-earth history, which I think is super fun. So for those of you that just came in, we are talking about the 1st century of Judea, and we just got through talking about the Nabataeans, and we're talking about how Rome was very big on this whole you've got to worship the emperor thing, and the Jewish people were like, we don't do emperor worship. So we had just talked about the reign of Caligula, who was really, really crazy and demanded to be worshipped as a god, but then he got killed. And we get this new emperor, a guy named Claudius, who is a little bit more chill, but he's very strict on the Roman religion. And one of the things that starts happening inside of especially the big cities like Jerusalem and Caesarea, these big cities where there are a lot of Roman presence, the Roman military starts bringing in a lot of their symbols. Each Roman legion has a standard called an aquilifer, which basically has their symbols of their legion on it. So if you've ever seen paintings on the side of a World War II plane, or if you know anything about squadron names or unit names, like if you've ever heard the Band of Brothers that they made the series out of, Charlie Company, that group has kind of a name, and they have their own little symbols. That's something that goes way, way back in history. Dun, 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 dun. Nefarious Nerf Herder, that is an amazing username. I hope that you're not scruffy looking, and I hope that you are having a good time. Thanks so much for that follow. Welcome to the adventure. And now we're just 2 away. Just 2 away. Nefarious Nerf Herder, that's great. I love that. I got that reference. Hertree, woo! Dun 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 dun. Is everybody telling their family to go make accounts and follow me now? If so, don't put pressure on anybody. Everybody should only follow if they really want to. I would rather have like 10 followers with 10 people that showed up all the time than 1,000 followers and 10 people show up all the time. So don't pressure people to go follow. If you are listening and you're interested, though, that's different. Okay, so the Romans begin to make their presence felt a little bit more, and you start seeing these Roman symbols, which are, of course, based around the Roman religion, pop up in a lot of the big cities, and you start seeing... Well, there we go! Dun dun! Rough Spun Tunic. Thank you. Welcome to the adventure. And you are now follower 500. Thank you so very much for that follow. And we have hit it, ladies and gentlemen. 500 followers. A very special thanks to every single one of you. 500 followers is a huge thing. When I first started doing this, I didn't think that I would be able to hit 50 followers that I would need to get to the point of making an affiliate, much less now have 10 times that. Thank you all so very much. You are a great group of people. I say that from the very bottom of my heart. Thank you all. I appreciate the fact that you're willing to take times out of your lives to come hang out and just talk about some history with a weird-looking guy like this. So yeah, we have hit that magic number, and I will go ahead and plan a History of Middle-earth stream. Normally we do those on Saturdays. I don't think that I'll be able to do one this Saturday or next Saturday because I have previous family-based arrangements for both of those. Potentially a Sunday, maybe. I can't promise, but what I can do is tell you if you are interested in learning more about what we talk about, seeing some historical memes, or just sort of chatting, you can go hang out on the Discord. When I find a day where we will be able to plan History of Middle-earth Part 4, I will definitely be posting announcements there. Thank you all again so very much. It makes me feel all of the feels. You all are a special group of people. So you can take that with a little bit of ego boost, and you get the thumbs up. Anyway, so there are going to be some troubles. And there are going to be a group of Jewish people that began forming organized resistance to the Romans. And these people take the name the Zealots. And if you are a close reader of the Christian New Testament, you will know that there is even one of Jesus's disciples who's named Simon the Zealot. So he was sort of part of this anti-Roman coalition of Jewish people. Hey, Capacitor, welcome. Good to see you, friend. And the Zealots are going to start sort of going on the very slow, very sneaky offensive. Inside of the Zealots, there's sort of a specialized hit squad that are going to take the name Sicarii. And this comes from a particular type of knife, and I'm realizing now that I'm saying this that I should have found a picture of one of them, Sicarius. It's a very long, very thin-bladed knife. And these particular Sicarii were known for assassinating people. And the way that they would do this was very literally in broad daylight. They would wear very loose-fitting clothes. Oh, no, you're fine. No worries. You can do it 17 more times if you want to. And they would wear very loose-fitting clothes, and up the sleeves of their tunics, perhaps rough-spun tunics, they would have one of these long-bladed knives. And then they would walk up next to a particular person who was a target. Perhaps this was a family member of a Roman official, or a commander in the Roman legions, or maybe an outspoken Greek person who used to be Jewish that had converted to the pagan religions. And they would take that really long, skinny knife and just sort of go and Assassin's Creed these guys through the ribs and stab them a few times and then just walk off like nothing was wrong. Like, oh no, Jimmy's bleeding. How's it going, everyone? Capacitor, we're doing great. How are you? You doing all right? This makes you want to play Assassin's Creed. Yeah. So that idea of the skinny walk up in plain sight and stab you in the side thing, that's not necessarily wrong. That's got some historical precedent. And these guys were making a lot of trouble inside of Judea because they were very much a hide in plain sight sort of people. They did not necessarily advertise that they were part of the Sicarii. They met in very small cells. They didn't necessarily know everybody that was part of the group. You didn't even necessarily have to be one of the Sicarii to sort of do, one-off attempts. Like, I just hate this guy a lot. I just sort of want to kill him. I know this is what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to go do it. So these could even be like rogue agents. You could be sort of switched on into the Sicarii, but not even part of the larger organization. And if we've learned anything from the asynchronous warfare that the United States has basically run since 2001, and even back into the War of Vietnam, it's really hard to tell who the bad guys are when the bad guys aren't openly displaying that they're the bad guys. And the Romans are having a really tough time handling all of these assassinations. So it's going to get to the point where Rome starts cracking down. And this is going to trigger a very brief rebellion called the Jacob and Simon Uprising. There are two brothers named Jacob and Simon. They're both zealots. They're going to start a sort of a rural uprising in 46. That's going to carry on until 48. At that point, the Romans mobilize the army. They catch these guys and their band of ruffians who are sort of hiding out in the hills. They kill both of them. And that's going to... they kill them pretty brutally in front of a whole bunch of people. And you all know how that goes. It doesn't go over very well. But what's really going to make this really bad is this Roman governor named Florus. You seem to like the teacher all the students love. Oh, I seem like the teacher all the students love. Oh, well, I appreciate that. I don't like being fuddy-duddy. I don't like the idea of just sort of droning. That's not really my thing. I don't know. Didn't some of the Jews think Simon was the Messiah? That's a different Simon. I believe you're thinking of Simon Bar Kokhba. Simon the son of the star. That's the second Jewish revolt. That's in mostly Africa. I don't know if the Jacob and Simon had any messianic overtones, but I know for a fact that Simon Bar Kokhba did. That was a big thing that they sort of leaned into. But that's not until the 2nd century. So that's in the 100s. About 100 years from this point, actually. I love that all of this stuff is just like crammed up here. Like, yeah, hang on that. Hey, history boy, spit out a random history fact for me. Which you can do if you've hit follow. You already have enough adventure points to make me spit out a random history fact. So, anyway, Florus was a new governor that gets brought into govern Judea because we've changed emperors again, and now we have this guy. Oh yes, this guy, Nero, Emperor of the Neckbeard. I've shown Nero's photo several times now. He'll show up again next week because we have to talk about what happens after he dies. Completely random one, please. Random one. Completely random. Okay, we'll do one that's messianic in nature. One of the reasons... well, let me sort of back up. Do it, history boy, do it. Dance, history monkey, dance. Let me switch back over here. So if we're speaking of the Messiah here, one of the things that is pretty common in Jewish opposition to Rome is people claiming that they were, in fact, the Messiah. And one of the reasons why a lot of Jewish people at the time, so we're talking about contemporary first century Jewish people, did not dig Jesus that much is because he did not seem interested in leading an armed rebellion against Rome. And you can actually see this if you read the New Testament closely. There are points where several Jewish people ask him, like, hey, what's up with this? Are you gonna do the Messiah thing where you kick out Rome and take everything over? And he's like, not that kind of Messiah, bud. And then they get real hacked off. Especially one point where they're like, hey, do we have to pay taxes to Rome still? Because they're jerks. And Jesus is like, this is render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And that's actually sort of seen as these Jewish people going, are you going to kill the Romans and make us independent again? And Jesus is like, not so much. So there's a kind of messianic fact for you. Hertrey, you actually get to pick if you want a specific type of history fact. You are welcome to give a little bit of guidance, or I can just spit something utterly random out. And you never really know what you're going to get that way. So would you like a random fact about some area or some era or something, or just like roll the dice? I'll take a sip of tea here. Art history. This is good stuff. I actually quite like art history, by the way. I've spent a lot of time digging into art history, and I had hoped at one point, well, I don't know, I'll save that one because it might still happen. Random art history. You're interested to see the first one that pops into my head. Okay, so the first one that actually popped into my head is based on an article that I read last week where some archaeologists had been doing some excavation work and had found basically the hashtag symbol. Basically 2 lines parallel going vertical and 2 lines parallel crossing it going horizontal. And this particular sign was done in Iraq, not in Iraq, the country. But they had roughly carbon dated that back to somewhere around the 150,000 to 160,000. Yes, the Octothorpe. Exactly. Thank you. I would have said Octothorpe. I did not know how many people knew the word Octothorpe, but I'm glad Vern did. And they were claiming that this was the earliest representative artistic design that they had ever located. So theoretically, humans around the 160,000 BC mark might have already been working on figuring out how to draw designs. That is really, really, really far back in history. We would have been somewhere between what are we going to do? I got to do math in my head. 50 and 60,000 years old as a species at that point. You mean all you have to do is just paint hashtags? Nomad, yeah, absolutely. And you could even do a whole series now, and you could make it edgy, like the whole thing, like, this is my series, hashtags, and it's a take on how Twitter is overtaking society, and you could, like, I'm going to make this hashtag out of hate tweets, and I'm just going to, like, print out all the tweets and organize them into the hashtag symbol on a wall. And this is going to be the symbol of how hashtags have turned into symbols of hate. And then I'm going to do another one that's all about, like, that's just made out of mirrors. And this hashtag made out of mirrors is a symbol of how vain we are on the internet. So you now have an entire gallery of hashtags that you can make, and if you want inspiration, just shoot me a message, and I'll send you like 70 more of those. For those of you that are not already, you should totally go follow Visual Nomad. Visual Nomad is a delightful streamer. Does oil and sometimes acrylic. Visual, do you do acrylic paints or is it just purely oils? I can't remember. But does great painting on Twitch here. Please do go give Visual Nomad a follow. You will not regret it. Great streamer and good friend. Shane, do it. Full on art history. Yeah, see, that my brain is a weird little thing. We do not talk about acrylic. Okay. I apologize. That's why I didn't commit on the acrylic. That's why I stopped to ask. Fair. You do photography. Yes, I should have said that. I should say this to all of our lovely art friends that are in the stream right now. I know we also have, let me shout out Color by Emmy, who is walking Chopper, her puppy, who's not really a puppy. He's a big old honking dog, but you know, all dogs are puppies, right? If you are an artist or a person that has social media that you want people to follow, throw that junk in the chat. Go ahead and do it. Just let everybody know where you are. Give everybody some love. Go give everybody some follows. I know Vern has an art-based Instagram that is quite delightful. You get also some pictures of really interesting pictures of everyday life in New York City. I really enjoy looking at Vern's photography. Just got out of a commercial again. Are they playing commercials inside my stream, Hertree? Like, did they make you watch a commercial in the middle of my stream? Because that's really going to make me upset. Or did you leave and come back? That's disturbing. I hope that they are not cutting my live stream to make you all watch commercials. Ah, there we go. Okay. I was about to get very agitated. Anyway, so yeah, there we go. I'll throw it on the ground. I'm an adult. Anyway, Nero. Yeah, this guy. Neckbeard Nero. I will never not call him Neckbeard Nero. Because he's got a neckbeard. I should have been wearing the hat on that. Nero, when he takes over, is going to put this guy Florus in command. And Florus, man, let me say, this guy really, really wants to suck up to Nero. And he does not like the Jewish people at all. Why he was chosen to be the procurator of Judea, and maybe it's to whip those Jewish people in shape. Everybody knew that this guy hated the Jewish people. So when he takes over in Judea, you know how this goes, right? The guy's not going to be a good governor. And he's going to let the Hellenic population of these cities basically get away with murder. At one point, a group of Greek people sacrifice unclean animals right outside of the Jewish temple to the Greek gods. This causes the temple to become unclean. The temple then has to shut down for days while the Jewish priests go through the cleansing ritual. This is a really big honking deal. The Jewish people are very, very big on ritual cleanliness. This is something that was super important to their religion. And this, of course, is going to cause the Jewish people to get very upset at Florus. So how is Florus going to get back at them? Well, he decides that he's going to take money out of the Jewish temple treasury. Now, if you'll remember, the Jewish people are able to take up a tax to keep the temple operating, and Florus is going to break into the treasury and steal a big chunk of the money. 17 talents of silver, which is a weight, lots of money. This would be like millions of dollars, basically. Holy Leviticus, Batman! All right. So Florus is going to take all of this money, and then when the Jewish people protest, he calls up the Roman military there, and he goes, "Oh, no, no, no! This money is for the emperor, because I need to make a gift to the emperor, because you all are being rude and not worshiping him the right way." And so the Jewish people do one of history's sick burns. There are periods of time in history where, because human beings are human beings, people get burned. And because the Jewish people at that time were heavily outnumbered by the Roman soldiers that had been brought into the temple, or to the temple complex and to the city, they knew that it was a bad idea to start violence right there. So what they do is they call together the Jewish community, and they literally start passing around a basket, and they go, oh guys, Florus is poor, and he needs our help. So let's take up a collection for poor old Florus so that he can suck up to the emperor. Now, we want to make sure that Florus has money to give to the emperor, because we all know that Florus is just dirt poor. And they literally pass around a basket, and people are throwing in like pennies. And they bring this up to him. They're like, "Here you go, man. I hope you have I hope your luck turns out better. I hope that everything works out for you. And, we took up this offering, and we want to give this to you because we know that you're in a rough spot." And this just humiliates the devil out of Florus. Like, everybody in the city is just like, "Poor old Florus. You gotta ask the Jews for the money." Oh, good times. Yes, hashtag Hicks History Sick Burns. Florus gets so mad. Oh, so mad. He just goes ballistic. And he commands thoughts and prayers for Florus. Yes. Well done. That's great. Thoughts and prayers. He's going through a rough time. Oh, man. So, so Florus has the army basically go door to door through Jerusalem, and he rounds up a lot of the very big sort of high-level social leaders of the Jewish people and some of their religious leaders, and then he beats the devil out of them, puts them on trial, finger quote, and has a whole bunch of them crucified. And this actually breaks Roman law, because a lot of these people were Roman citizens. And they were Jewish, but they were Roman citizens. Not everybody that lived in Rome, by the way, was a Roman citizen. Citizenship was something that you had to earn or be given. So some of these people had been given citizenship, and Roman citizenship basically exempted you from a lot of the harsher punishments. So if you were a Roman citizen, you were not supposed to be crucified. This was against Roman law. But Florus is like, "You have humiliated me. I don't give a crap if you're a Roman citizen. You're going to be crucified." This is the spark that sets off the first Jewish rebellion. This starts in 66 BC, the first Jewish rebellion. The Jewish people are going to wait until the Romans leave the city of Jerusalem, and then they're going to organize a really big gang, and they're going to overrun the Roman, basically, army garrison that has all of their weapons in it. And when they do so, they're going to arm and armor themselves, and then they're going to set out through the city of Jerusalem, killing all of the Roman soldier patrols. They're going to kill a lot of the citizens that supported Florus. They're going to try to kill Florus, who actually does manage to escape, but barely. But they're also going to start burning all of these Roman symbols, these Roman flags that the Romans had been flying around with all these pagan symbols on them. They're going to start burning all of that stuff, and they're going to make it very clear that the Jewish people are no longer going to stand for Roman oppression. The rebellion is going to spread fairly quickly, and several of the really big cities in the region, including the city of Caesarea, which was a big port city that had actually been built. Caesarea had been built by Herod the Great as a sort of a gift to the Emperor Augustus. But the Jewish people are going to take that over. They're also going to take over a big fortress city called Masada. And that will come into play in a little bit towards the end. But in 66, they're going to redeclare the Jewish territory of Judea independent. And that's not going to go over so great with the Romans. The Roman governor of Syria was this guy named Gallus at the time. Gallus is going to, again, load up all of the army, and he has about 35,000 troops with him. Have to finish dinner, have an awesome night. Absolutely, Herchie. Thanks so much again for the follow, for getting me closer, and then eventually hitting that 500. Hope you have a great dinner. We'll be around for a little bit more, but I don't know how long. So Gallus is going to march down with 35,000 troops.
I'm Spartacus!
Aww. I'm Spartacus.
I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus! I'm Spartacus!
You get the Spartacus. And thanks for that sub. Much appreciated. Oh, the Spartacus emotes. You said you were... We're all Spartacus. We can all be Spartacus. He's big enough for us to all be Spartacus. So, Gallus is going to march down, and he's actually going to run into some pretty heavy Jewish resistance, and there's a battle at a place called Bet Horon. And the Romans are going to get beaten. Gallus, with his big army of 35,000 soldiers, is going to get routed and completely beaten by the Jewish rebellion. The Jewish people kill some 6,000 of his soldiers, capture more, and Gallus is basically going to desert his own army and run back up to Damascus to send word over to Nero, hey, the Jewish people are up in arms and they just beat me and stole a lot of my battle standards and burned some more of them and killed a whole bunch of Roman soldiers. Please help me send more. But this brings us to our second show and tell set of items, because one of the things, and I'll actually put the adventure hat on now, one of the things that the Jewish rebellion does to legitimize themselves is that they start issuing their own money. Adventure hat! Hey, Amy. Welcome back. And these are actually really rare. These coins that I'm about to show you were only minted for about 4 years in history, which means that they are very low in number, and they only circulated inside of Judea, which means that they are very small in circulation. Again, these are legal. I obtained these through legal channels. I have certificates of authenticity that were issued by legal representatives of the government of Israel. This is not stuff that I have stolen or smuggled. It is legal. All right. But anyway, they start issuing their own money. And I have 2 of the coins that were issued during the Jewish rebellion. And I'll share them with you. So this one is a copper coin. They're both actually copper. Focus. There we go. And this has a menorah on it. So if you're familiar with the Jewish faith or know anything about like Hanukkah, you know what the menorah is. So this was a symbol of the Jewish faith. On the back side, or the obverse, we have some grains of wheat symbolizing prosperity, hoping that the Jewish people would encounter prosperous and long-lasting success in their war against Rome. Well, I say that because, I mean, there is a lot of theft. I mean, just to be honest, there really is a lot of theft, especially from this area of the world. A lot of people smuggle stuff. There's a really heavy black market for a lot of these antiquities. So when I stress that they are legal, I just do that because I want people to realize a lot of this stuff isn't. So a lot of the stuff that you see being passed around, especially if you are looking for antiquities on things like eBay, if you don't have certificates of authenticity, there's a decent chance that that's black market stuff that's not legal. So anyway, here's another one. This one is in pretty bad shape. It was fairly badly misstruck. You can see, if you look up here, the edge of the coin is pretty far off of the blank. That's one reason why I was able to get my hands on this. The really well struck coins you don't see hit the market. They're the ones that are in museums. So this is a fairly bad misstrike. But what you see here is some grape leaves. Of course, one of the big exports from this area is wine. And on the back, again, because it's misstruck, you can't really see the material very well. But you have a legend. By the way, the words on a coin are called a legend, declaring Judea independent. So again, these are about 2,000 years old. Because these are bronze, they are from the very, very end of the Jewish rebellion. These are probably minted after 70. The Jewish rebellion runs from 67 to 73. By the time you get to the 70 mark, the Jewish rebellion had run out of both money and men. So they switched from silver coins to bronze coins because it's easier to make bronze than it is silver. It is definitely legal to say, buy all your illegal antiquities from Hobby Lobby. Kelly, and for those of you that are maybe you're aware of this or maybe you're not, but the family that owns Hobby Lobby is a really, and I'm not saying this to cast aspersions, this is not slander or libel, this is the truth. They're really bad at buying stuff off of the black market and smuggling it into America. They're also not very bright about what they buy because they've bought a lot of fake stuff that they have passed off as real. And then when, people go to look at it, it turns out, no, you bought a forgery. Congratulations. You have the points for a request if they are available for purchase. History of Atlantis theories. Now, Moose, when you say that, is that like what ancient people thought about Atlantis, or is that you're asking for my take on Atlantis? Because those are different things. Hobby Lobby are straight up bad people. So the people that own Hobby Lobby. I don't want to say that everybody that works in or at Hobby Lobby is a bad person. I don't know all of them. I don't actually know the people that run Hobby Lobby. I have just seen that they have participated in illegal activity in public. Which, of course, I condemn. So, yeah. I can work on turning that on, Moose. And you're going to have to clarify that for me in a bit. Okay, so let's press forward. I'm actually running over time pretty badly. But it's okay. So... Ba-dum-ba-dum-ba-dum-bum. Like where all the theories came from? We'll have to clarify this off stream. So when Nero hears that the Jewish rebellion has defeated a Roman army, Nero is going to pull one of the big generals, a guy named Vespasian, which is getting us to our title for tonight, Crystal Blue Vespasian. If you don't know where that song comes from, you should go check out Tommy James and the Shondells, one of my favorite bands from when I was growing up. You may, if you haven't heard, I hope you've heard Crystal Blue Persuasion, a pretty big hit from back in that time. If you haven't heard that one, you might have heard Crimson and Clover, which was their other big hit. Tommy James and the Shondells. Good band. Go check them out from way back in the day. Vespasian, though. Vespasian is this guy. And Vespasian is one of, like, the for real big Roman generals. He was, for a period of time, sort of the overlord of all of the Roman armies. He was kind of Nero's right-hand military guy. And when it comes time to deal with problems, well, let's just say when you send Vespasian, you're being serious about stuff. So Nero is going to send Vespasian with an army of 60,000 troops. And when Vespasian shows up, it's not good for the Jewish rebellion. Within a couple of years, not even a couple of years, within the first year that he gets there, the very beginning of 67, Vespasian beats the mess out of the Jewish revolt. So much so that when Nero dies in 67, Vespasian's like, I think I've done what I can. And Vespasian is going to leave and go back to Rome, and we'll talk about him next week. But Vespasian is going to send his son Titus to sort of take over the war effort. This here is Titus. I should be wearing my adventure hat. I took this photo of Titus. Titus is, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but he's a very capable general in his own. And he is going to carry out the sort of the remainder of the war against the Jewish people, which is not going to go very well for the Jewish people. They basically lose every single battle after that. In AD 70, Titus is going to take the city of Jerusalem, and as a symbol of Roman domination of the area, he is going to destroy the Jewish temple, leaving only one of the outer walls, or part of one of the outer walls standing. But the temple itself is destroyed, and he's also going to begin an organized depopulation of Jewish people from the area. Because the Jewish people decide, I'm kind of done. I'm sorry, the Romans decide that they're kind of done with these Jewish people being an organized problem. So the plan is to spread Jewish people out all over the Roman Empire and take small pockets of them, maybe 15 or 20, and throw them to Britain and throw them to Spain and Northern Africa and the Black Sea coastline and Greece. Basically a forced depopulation of Jewish people. And the Jewish people refer to this in history as the diaspora. But Titus is going to begin this. It's going to become official Roman policy not too long after that. There is a group of Jewish rebels, basically the core of the Zealot group, that very vocal anti-Roman group, who hold up in the big fortress of Masada. And what I want to do here is actually zoom in on Masada using our good friend Google Earth here, because I want to show you something. Masada is one of the greatest historical remains of any battlefield ever. So what we see here are the remains of the fortress of Masada, which was up here. And you can see, like, this square and this square, these are the remains of the Roman camps. Enhance. Give me 34 by 45. Pan. Stop. Pan 45 right. Stop. Yeah, I love that movie too. But this thing right here is one thing I want you to look at. This was a giant siege ramp. So the fortress sat up here on top of this bluff, and the Romans built this because they were going to get into the city. And they did. It took them 3 years. The city of Masada, or the fortress of Masada, was under siege for 3 years while they built that siege ramp. And when they got to the point where they're going to get over the top of the walls, all of the zealots inside decided that they were going to kill themselves. And the way that they did this, suicide was not really a thing that was kosher with the Jewish people. So they drew lots, and they got basically one guy who had to go around and kill everybody, and then he killed himself. So, yeah, that was the official final end of the Jewish rebellion. But for all intents and purposes, when Titus destroyed Jerusalem in 70, that was sort of the big end. But these were the last rebel holdouts. And the Romans were not going to let any of these people go. They were going to make an example out of them, and they did so by ensuring that every single one of them died. I think Figment has been to Masada, and DJ has been to Masada. One of the things that the Jewish army now does, so the Jewish army, the country of Israel, the Israeli army, I should not say Jewish army, the Israeli army has required army service. If you are of a certain age, you are required to do military training. And one of the things that they do sort of at the end of boot camp is take you out to Masada, and they sort of show you, like, look, this is what happens when people try to come after Israel and how serious they are about it. So you need to train to prevent stuff like this from happening. I am jealous of people that have been to Masada. I have not been there. I've not been to Israel. I want to go pretty badly, though. I was actually just talking to a friend a couple of days ago. He was born in Israel, now lives over here in the States. You didn't walk up the pathway, though? Yeah. It's sometimes really, really crowded. It's a pretty big and very common tourist site. All right. But that is going to wrap up the Jewish rebellion, because in 73, when that happens, that is the end of even the last little bit of the rebellion. And that is also the end of the stream for tonight. Well, that's the end of what I had prepared for the stream tonight. So at this point, if anybody has any questions about stuff that we have talked about tonight, if you have any adventure points that you want to redeem, if anybody wants to see the puppy, or if anybody wants to ask stuff like what's in the news, now would be the time to do that. Otherwise, you miss everything when you have classes. Oh, Figment, it's okay. You can go watch the VOD, which I know is not the same, but when the show here ends, the recording of this show will actually be saved on the channel, and you can go back and watch that. And you can watch basically, I haven't managed to get every single VOD. I've missed some of them, but the vast majority of VODs are still available. You go to my page and you click videos, and then you roll down to where it says collections, and you'll see Adventures in History, which is again the mainline show, and then you'll see viewer requests. You thought Caesarea was amazing? Yeah, I want to go to Caesarea too. I want to see that big harbor that they made, the man-made harbor. That is just, it kind of blows my mind. Before I ask about the news, are you up to date with the story behind the investigation into COVID potentially being a lab leak? Yeah, you can ask that if you want to. You do, but you always want to join the conversation, and you never can, and then it's awkward. I have been keeping up on that. You're welcome to ask about that if you want to. All right, Moose, if you're still around, I have turned on Choose Your Own Adventure again. I'm here. What did I miss? Tuna, you missed everything except for the wrap-up stuff. Okay, so Kyle, you're specifically asking about the COVID situation and my take on it, or are you just asking me to summarize what we know about it? I'll just do what I know, because you asked about what's in the news and you did not ask for an opinion, so that sort of answers my question. Okay, so here's the thing. There has been, for quite some time, a discussion that COVID came out of a lab in Wuhan. And there is a lab that is in Wuhan that does exploration stuff about viral research. They do a lot of stuff on, like especially they're called zoonotic viruses that skip over from animals to humans. So there is a lab in Wuhan where people at one time were looking at this most recent COVID variant. The question that has been raised is at what point that happened. For example, one theory says they isolated this particular strain of COVID from nature, because one of the things that they looked at were viruses that come from nature that could infect humans. After they isolated it, they then had a leak where somebody that was researching it got infected, and then it sort of broke out of that lab. And then there is another theory that it was something that came out of nature, got into the population in Wuhan, and then the people inside of the lab got it and started researching it. Whether or not this lab researched COVID, especially the modern COVID variant, is not necessarily in question. We do know that that lab had COVID samples in it. That is beyond contestation. At what point they had it is the interesting facet. Now, there is a conspiracy theory that they made this from scratch. That's bullcrap. Notice not wearing opinion hat. There is not currently technology that exists to manufacture viruses like that operate that way. Making a virus is not something you can just do in your spare time in your backyard. Making a virus that propagates the way that viruses work is not something that you can do. We do not have the technology to do that. And I'm missing a lot of chat here. You think Getty was about that, Old City of Jerusalem, for what you know about genetic stuff, if it was engineered, they're using tags. Yes, so there we go. We don't have that. Yes, tags for cutting, yes. That's a whole process. The strains did not have those. Yes, exactly. They're using stuff that does not exist yet, if they did that, and it does not exist yet. There's no reason to believe that that particular lab in Wuhan had the ability to recombinate DNA that way. It's the whole, we made this in a lab is not accurate and doesn't matter. That you should discredit all of the rumors that they made this in a lab. They did not make this in a lab. Correlation isn't causation, but there are a lot of coincidences that are hard to make. Yeah, so we know that it was in the lab. Was it in the lab first and then it got out? Or was it in the population and then they started researching it in the lab? Those are two different things. We don't know for sure. There has been recently a rumor that has not been completely confirmed that somebody that worked in that lab potentially had COVID in November of 2019, which would have been way before that even started breaking out in Wuhan. Is that accurate? We do not know. Did that person actually have COVID? We do not know. It is at this point an unsubstantiated rumor. What has happened is that recently, based on the information that the United States government has been able to collect, they have opened up an investigation into the timeline. Let me be very clear here. The government of the United States is not investigating whether or not China made the COVID virus out of scratch in a lab. That is not what they are investigating. What they are investigating is the timeline of when COVID got to the lab and when COVID started spreading. That's what they're after right now. And when they figure that out, we will have more information. Will we ever know completely what happened? It's hard to say because China put the lid on this really quick and started pointing fingers at everybody else for a reason, because they did not want to own up to this. That is going to be especially bad if they had it isolated prior to it being in the population and then their lab goofed up and let it out. That is going to look really, really, really bad on China. And of course, it's going to continuously fuel this conspiracy theory that China made it in a lab. They did not make it in a lab. There is no evidence that exists to support the idea that China made this in a lab. That is not what happened. There's a whole thing about a group on Twitter that broke a lot of the information that is getting this idea another look. It almost reads like a movie. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of stuff that's going on the internet that's doing sort of like cyber sleuthing, that's comparing a lot of old records from tweets from people that lived in Wuhan that are doing a lot of digging around through social media records from that period of time that exist. It's kind of a modern day Indiana Jones digital archaeological kind of thing, though, because facts are hard to put together, and China put the crackdown on a lot of its social media years and years ago, so we don't even necessarily know if we can trust everything that came out of Chinese social media. There we go. Okay, so now let me put on the opinion hat. Thoughts on the latest Israeli election news? Netanyahu is on the way out now officially with the new coalition that was formed. Okay, so let's be clear here. As of what I know prior to me coming on stream, Netanyahu is not definitely out. Here's what's happened. The elections, the most recent elections delivered a result where nobody had a majority. The Knesset has 120 seats in it. To get a majority, you have to have 61 seats. No party won 61 seats. The Likud party, which was Benjamin Netanyahu's, was the largest party that got the closest to 61 seats. The president gave him the option of forming a government first. He was not able to do so. At that point, the president asked basically any other party leader if they could form a government. And Bennett, one of the guys that's the head of the Yair Lapid party, made a coalition of a whole bunch of people, including some sort of very, very strict Jewish party members that were sort of sick of Netanyahu, and an Arab Israeli party, and some moderate, what we would call left-wing people, and they have, at the moment, formed a 61-seat coalition. However, Netanyahu is not gone. Netanyahu has a lot of power inside of Israel even still. Netanyahu is not gone until several things happen. So first, the current coalition of 61 members. So they have literally they have the bare minimum number of votes in the Knesset that they need to start this process. So if even one member of that coalition backs out of the coalition is falling apart. So they have to do several things before they can get rid of Netanyahu. The first thing is that they have to get rid of the current sort of like Speaker of the Parliament, the leader of the Parliament. They have to get rid of that person in order to elect one of their own, somebody from their group. The person that is the current, that's in this current speaker spot is a very close ally of Benjamin Netanyahu. So they're going to do everything that they can to either delay or stop that vote from happening, because that person gets basically control over who gets to introduce bills and who gets to introduce motions into the Knesset. So to have a new election for prime minister, you have to get rid of that person, because that guy is never going to allow this group to have another election. So they have to get rid of that person first. They have not yet met to oust that person from the seat. And it's not necessarily certain that they're even going to be able to do that, because again, Netanyahu is currently browbeating every single member of this coalition that he has any sort of dirt on to try to keep them from voting in line with him. So they have to get rid of the speaker. They have to put a new person in, and then they have to elect a new prime minister. So there are 3 procedural steps that have to happen between now and Netanyahu actually being gone. At this point, Netanyahu is still the elected prime minister and will be until they elect a new person. He has a lot of dirt on people, and he has a lot of power. He can apply a lot of pressure. So we don't know if he is gone yet. My opinion is I don't know if he's gone yet. I wouldn't vote against the guy. Not that I don't support... Well, hold on a second. I said that badly. I wouldn't bet against the guy. I would vote against a lot of his policies. I would not bet on him leaving power just because they formed a 61-seat coalition against him. He's not gone yet. He won't be gone until they elect a new prime minister. That has not happened. That might not happen. So, there's that. Alrighty. They found a bunch of scientific papers that potentially reference the development. That there is currently not technology in existence to do what people think has to be done to make a virus act like that. The way that... And I could probably get my wife to explain this a lot better, but in order to change the genetics of a living thing, you have to use certain sets of DNA that are markers that basically surround the piece of DNA that you're trying to add into the existing DNA strand. And you have to have those so that the chemicals that you introduce into the DNA know where to cut the DNA and to insert your DNA and then mush it back together. For the coronavirus as it exists right now to have been created in a lab would mean that when we looked at the DNA sequence of coronavirus, we would have been able to identify those individual little marker groups of DNA. Those have not been located, which means that for China to have developed this in a lab, they would have to have technology that is light years ahead of anything that exists or has even been really theorized in modern science. China is ahead of us in science, but they're not cut and paste genetics willy-nilly. That's like God level powers, and they don't have that yet. Nobody has that yet. If they did have that, they would not have used that to make something as dinky as COVID. And I say dinky because they could have made literally a death plague that wiped out 100% of people. Not just to distinguish COVID as a minor road bump, but there have been much worse sicknesses that they could have played around with than something that has been located in nature in bat populations. There is not science that exists to make something like that in a lab as it exists right now. A 3-hat day. Obviously, aliens made the virus and gave it to QAnon in China, and they set it loose to combat Antifa. Oh, fun times. Okay, so we have Figment and DJ talking about Israel. Did you see possible China's UAPs? The Pentagon is investigating. Oh, anybody that wants to investigate aliens is welcome to do so. I don't know what they're going to find. I know that a lot of the stuff that is out there is not as exciting as what people would probably like for it to be. If it's impossible to modify a virus, why is it even being considered as a plausible theory? It's not impossible to modify a virus. It's not impossible to modify any piece of DNA. It's impossible to modify something in a way that would be utterly undetectable. And let's also remember that one of the ways that it's being spread is through a whole bunch of people that would really like for a certain viewpoint to be accurate, because that would justify to them everything that they have believed, and especially a particular branch of politics that would love for this thing to have come out of a lab to basically justify everything they have stood for the last 4 years. A lot of people hope that this was made in a lab, and hope will make you do things that you don't normally do, like believe in garbage science. Science is too much. It's just doing too much. Nature is too much. All of it just needs to take a nap. Taxpayer money on aliens, though, in a certain way, if they wanted to spend that money researching aliens and not blowing people up in other countries, I'd be fine with that. Military industrial spending, I mean, whatever. They're going to spend the money pretty much anyway. Neither party in the United States has the backbone to stand up to the military. Military spending is going to happen regardless until Congress finally finds a backbone and stops. And I don't know if that'll ever happen. And that's not an opinion, that's just a fact. You made it just in time for aliens. I am dismissing it for scientific reasons. I live with a geneticist who plays around with DNA on a daily basis and spent 6 years messing around with genetic DNA in cells that has taught me an awful lot about genetic manipulation. The DNA strand of the modern COVID virus that's going around does not have markers that show genetic manipulation. That is a scientific fact. If they did do that with science, it would not be... It would be discoverable. We would be able to look at it and go, look, there are the markers. There's the little pieces of DNA that they injected in there. And we would be able to tell. There is not science that exists anywhere on the face of the earth to seamlessly swap out genes. That is a scientific fact. I'm not saying that politically. That's just science. I have spent a lot of time studying genetics. I read entire genetics things. Science can be selectively breeding for traits. That doesn't work in viruses. Viruses don't replicate the same way that cells with complex nuclear DNA do. Viruses don't... When a virus strand mutates, it doesn't mutate for the same selection processes that nuclear DNA uses to replicate and pass on mutations. Can we manipulate my DNA to just process food correctly? It was likely that that dumb lab tech just forgot to wash their hands. So you can breed polycellular or multicellular organisms for certain traits, yes. Doing the same thing with a non-nucleic monocellular organism is... So again, Kyle, they're not looking into whether or not it was genetically grown in a lab. They're looking at whether or not the Chinese lab isolated it from nature and then let it out. Like they found it occurring naturally in nature and then brought it to the lab to study it, and then it got out. Or if somebody caught it and then they brought that person into the lab and isolated it to study it. And Moose works in genetics. So again, yeah, they're not examining it to see if China created this. They're trying to see if it came from a lab because China isolated this from nature and then was just a moron and let it loose. Because again, so the reason we call it COVID-19 is because there are dozens and dozens of coronavirus strains that exist. The vast majority of them are only in animals and don't have any effect on humans. A few of the coronavirus strands that have gotten out have been pretty bad, like SARS. That one got out and killed a whole bunch of people. Yeah, SARS and MERS, right. So those were both strains that could jump from animals to humans. So one of the things that China was likely researching was which one of these strains could jump from animals to humans. So they had samples of COVID-19 in the lab and were trying to see, could we infect a human with that? And then they could have gone like, this isn't working. But then they could infect humans with that, and then it got rampant and got all loose. The article that you read said that they were researching COVID viruses from a particular cave, not that they had built the virus. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so like they had gone to this cave where these bats live and probably found it probably in their poop. And then tried to isolate this, and we're probably asking, is this one of these coronaviruses that could jump from animals to humans? Maybe so. And then got it loose. But there's also the possibility that somebody ate a bat in a wet market, and that got into their bloodstream, and it got out. So what they're looking for is the timeline for the transmission from sample of virus to human, from human to population. If the lab workers got sick with it, it likely boils down to carelessness. MERS has a fun property where it can only be transmitted from animals to humans, but not from humans to humans. There we go. Hey, Amira Berzini. Welcome. Ooh, a piece of candy. Nothing bad can come from injecting bat poop into your... Oh, Tuna, do not take that advice. There are plenty of things that could happen if you inject bat poop into your body. This is a lab that is known to run on a shoestring budget that specifically researches COVID viruses and is situated in the middle of a huge population center where the virus broke out. Right, so again, we're not doubting that... Well, I'm not doubting that at one time this virus was in a Chinese lab and that Chinese lab was in Wuhan. What I am doubting, and in fact saying could not be possible, is that the COVID virus as it exists right now could have been spliced and or put together in said lab and then released into the wild. That's not there. Yes, it was an existing virus that hadn't broken out before. Correct. That's where the disconnect was. And Kyle, you know I love you, brother. I'm not trying to get on anybody's case. Somebody wanted to become Batman. No, Vern. For that to happen, the bat has to bite you, and then you get bat powers. But you can't prove it, right? And I don't know if we will ever be able to prove it. Experimenting, but not engineering. Correct. Maybe they were just trying to create Jurassic Park. And we all know what happened with Jurassic Park, right? How many times do they have to get like everybody killed before they realize that dinosaur reincarnation is probably not the best thing to do? Bats have an interesting trade-off in their immune system. They basically always have some infections going on at all times, which means that the viruses in them have plenty of time to cross hybrid. Oh, super! There's only a 0.001% chance that you'll become Batman. Guano is still used in makeups. Dude, I have no idea. Yeah, Nature Found a Way. And you know what? On Nature Found a Way, I think that should probably like wrap up our discussion there. Also, screw you, I'm going to ride a dinosaur before you die. Junk, I hope that the dinosaur does not in turn then eat your face. So I hope for everyone's sake that is not what happens when you decide to go ride your dinosaur. Vegisaurus. It's a Vegisaurus. But yeah, different theories on where people think Atlantid is. Okay, we can talk about that. And I'll message you on Discord, and we'll talk about that a little bit too. Think of how fluffy a 50-foot chicken with 6-inch wing fangs would be. I still think that the lab that let Velveeta into the food market should have been shut down. Yeah, Techman, natural selection did not give us Velveeta. That was pure lab-grown cheese. Oh, man. All right, ladies and gents, we're going to go raid. Jay Axer, who is a big supporter of the channel, who has done a lot to help me out, has brought in some big raids, and has been very, very generous. So we're going to go raid Jay. Our battle cry, as always, is adventure. And if you have any of those lovely adventure hats, please do throw all of those lovely adventure hat emotes when we get into Jay's room. Give Jay some love. He's a great artist. He works at Blizzard in the Hearthstone world, so you might have seen some of his work if you play Hearthstone. The next time that you will definitely see me on stream is on Tuesday, and we will be talking about the history of electricity, which is a viewer request stream. So there we go. Thank you all so very much. Thank you again, everybody. We got to 500 follows. That's a huge deal. Thank you so very much for that. I'll let you all know when we get that History of Middle Earth stream scheduled. Otherwise, until then, see you around.